2, 3.
If mimic stories scare you, don't watch this. So the story starts when Angela's about 13 years old. Now, her grandmother had passed away in her house, and she always knew that it was haunted, but she didn't realize how bad it was until she was 14 years old. She said that her little sister and her dog would continuously look in the corner of the house, and that her little sister would say, "Nanny," every time she looked in the corner, and the dogs would just look in the corner and bark continuously. Well, she just kind of brushes these things off until one day she's home sick from school, and her mom and her dad are at work, and her sister is at school. She's just chilling, hanging out at her house, when suddenly her phone rings, and she looks down at her phone, and she realizes that it says that it's her great nan calling. So she answers the phone, and she just hears this scratching sound like, "Arr!" And she's like, "What is that?" And then she hears this sharp scream, and then the phone line just cuts off. Now, she surprisingly ignores this, and she just goes back to watching her TV show. Could not be me. Here's where it gets unnerving. She's sitting there watching TV when she hears the front door open, and she hears her mom say, "Are you okay?" And she said that something just felt off about it. Her chest got heavy, and her stomach just felt weird. She said something was telling her not to respond, but then she hears her mom call her name again. It's a little bit louder this time, and she's scared at this point. She said that, bear in mind, she was 14 years old. She had never been home alone, and so she was freaked out. Right as she's sitting there, scared out of her mind, her phone starts to ring, and the caller ID says it's her mom calling. And her mom says to her, "Are you okay?" Just like she had heard her say when she heard the door open. And then she just says, "I'm picking your siblings up from school." And at this point, Angela is just like, okay. Angela said she did not want to scare her mom, so she did not tell her mom what happened. Then it gets worse, because this brave girl decides that she's going to go downstairs and she's going to try to find out what she heard. She can't find anything, so she's walking back up the stairs when suddenly something just tugs her hair back and she falls down the stairs. Now, she starts screaming and crying, and as she's screaming and crying, she can still feel something tugging on her hair. And then just like that, she's out like a light. Next thing she remembers, her mom is waking her up, asking her again if she is okay. Now, the last thing she said in this email was, "Do you think this was my grandmother, or do you think that this was something else?" And my opinion, personally, is absolutely not do I think this was your grandmother. In no way, shape, or form do I think that your grandmother would do that. Well, I don't know her, but do you think that she would do that? I mean, most grandmothers wouldn't. But unless she was like mean in life, I don't think that this was your grandmother at all, because this was scary. Whatever this was trying to terrify you. And honestly, like, I can't even say it. Let's put it this way, since I can't say it. Trying to cause you physical uncomfortability to a severe extent, if you catch my drift. My question is, were you hurt after this? After you fell down the stairs? Did that hurt you? Because I'm sure that did, right? And also, one thing that I find really interesting is that you heard your mom open the door and say, "Are you okay?" And then your mom ended up saying that to you twice. And the second time she said it to you after you fell down the stairs, which makes me think that that was kind of like a foreboding for what was about to happen to you, which I personally think is like the eeriest part of the story. But what do you guys think about this entire story? Do you think this was her grandmother? I mean, I guess we would have to have a little bit more information to really know that, but I don't think it was. And do you think that that was kind of a foreboding when her mom opened the door and said, "Are you okay?" And clearly that was not her mother. And what else do you guys think about the story? I would love to hear your thoughts, suggestions, and opinions in the comments, but as always, please be respectful.
Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. About 7 years ago, my husband and I were having a movie night in the living room with our sons, ages 7 and 6. We brought our big king-size mattress into the living room so we could all sleep on it. My daughter was 2 at the time and went to bed earlier, so she was in her room sleeping in her crib. Everyone was sleeping at this point, and I was the last person awake by the time the movie was over, so I got up to shut everything off and went to go check on my daughter. She was asleep in her crib, so I shut the door and went and laid on the bed with my husband and sons. About 20 seconds after shutting my eyes, my son kicked me in his sleep, so I opened my eyes and sat up a bit to adjust myself away from him. I noticed something out of the corner of my eye on the couch, and when I looked over, it was my daughter sitting on the couch with her back towards me, staring at the black TV screen. Immediately, I knew it wasn't her because she was too small to crawl out of her crib, and even if she could, I would have heard some sort of noise, but the house was dead quiet. I stared at this thing for a long time, and I even pinched myself and blinked many times, and it never moved or disappeared. I finally just had to hide under the covers because I was so freaked out. When I peeked out 10 minutes later, the thing was gone. No clue what that thing was, but I haven't seen it since. Hell to the no. What was that? For background context, when I was little, I would sleepwalk very often, and if anyone spoke to me during this, I would become violent and throw things or yell at them. I would never remember these episodes until someone told me about it in detail. Then I would remember it faintly, the way you would remember a dream. As I grew up, this stopped. However, one day after high school, my sister and I were in the living room. She was a senior and I was a freshman. I was taking a nap on the couch and she was watching TV next to me. During my nap, I sat straight up and asked my sister, "Who's that?" And my sister replied, "Who's who?" It was just us home at the time. I looked to the other couch and said, "Wait, where did she go?" And I went right back to sleep. This was the first episode of sleepwalking I had had since elementary school. Like before, I didn't remember until she told me later that night. I remembered that I saw a woman sitting on the other couch just looking at us and smiling. We forgot about this until now, about 6 years later, and that woman looks exactly like my sister does now. When this first happened, my sister had very long hair and never wore makeup. The woman I saw had short hair and was very feminine, which is exactly how my sister looks now. Okay, so I don't know if that one is really like scary, like in like a bad way. Maybe that was like her sister from like a parallel universe or something, or her sister's like higher self, like coming and checking on them. Kind of creepy, yes, but also kind of cool. I'm from Central Illinois, a small town surrounded by small towns. I live in a fairly new area and my parents built our house. My grandma died when I was 2 and this happened when I was 6. My room is in the basement. If you come down the stairs and take an immediate right, it's the door to my room. If you go to the left, there's a hallway. Back then, there were 2 chairs in that hallway. The way my room was set up, I could see down the hallway from my bed. So when I was 6, I woke up one morning and I could see my grandma sitting in one of those chairs just looking at me. I got up to go see her, but when I left my room, she was just gone. I was right outside my door, so I just ran up the stairs to tell my parents. They didn't believe me and told me I was just dreaming. That was 12 years ago, and I still remember exactly how I felt, and I know there was no way I could have dreamt all of that and slept walk out into the hallway. That was the only time I ever saw her, and my parents never believed me, even though I've told them the exact same story for years. However, when I was 14, my dad and I were driving around the countryside for fun. We came across a cemetery and decided to drive through it. The earliest graves were from the 1800s. We were walking around when all of a sudden we saw this girl who looked like she was straight out of the 70s. We were in the middle of nowhere. There were no other cars. She literally came out of nowhere. We both watched her walk across the cemetery. We looked at each other, and when we looked back over, she was gone. It was so scary, we immediately left and called my mom. That was 4 years ago, and she still doesn't believe us. They both still don't believe me about my grandma, but I know what I saw both days. Also, when I was 14, I was home alone and in the basement. I walked into my bathroom, which is directly across from the chairs in the hallway. Right before I turned on the light, I felt this absolutely freezing hand grab my arm. I literally screamed because it scared me so bad. I grabbed my arm where I had felt the hand, and my arm was cold to the touch. I've never told anyone that because I feel crazy saying it. I turned around and no one was there. That's happened at least one other time since then, and it also happened in that bathroom.